breathe. I'm rolling my shoulder.
Life be lifing.
What'd you say?
I said life be lifing.
Life was lifing. We are learning.
Yes.
This is all very new. I've never
Work
been
it
good
out.
at grounding myself.
Me
Normally I
neither.
have a complete breakdown, and then eventually, after some time, I think I hit like a settle point. But
Yeah.
well, at first, me being me, I'm literally not gonna put this online whatsoever. And then like my literal goal is to help other people and be transparent about my experiences.
Yeah.
Hello. Welcome to the second episode of the Talk About Traumatized Podcast. We are finally back at it. Believe it or not, we've recorded like 3 in between episodes. But this is still our second episode for you all. But yeah, I guess I'll just start with the trigger warning. We do talk about triggering topics. We talk about sexual assault. We talk about our trauma. We talk about suicide ideations. We talk about really anything that could be triggering, could possibly get mentioned. But we do it in a funny, not so heavy way, or at least we try to most of the time. But if you cannot handle listening to heavy subjects, if you do not enjoy listening to heavy subjects, this might not be for you. But, you know, viewer discretion advised. Keep on watching if you would like to watch. You don't have to. You could like the episode and not watch. You could do that too. That's an option. However, we really are here. We're trying to be here for sexual assault survivors, domestic violence survivors, and really because trauma tends to come with a lot of similar symptoms, I think we can help a lot of other people out too.
Oh, yeah.
Our niche just happens to be sexual assault. So we all have our vices. And I think that's all I have for a trigger warning today.
Okay.
Cool. All right. I guess I'll start out by kind of just explaining our last week and everything like that. Well, first of all, I got a stomach bug. That was rough. That was really rough. That threw a big old boomerang in my week. And not just myself, but my son too. So that made life pretty difficult. But also just the sheer fact that we're figuring out what suits our style best and what we also think will suit the goals we're trying to achieve best. So I know like with the last episode, Reese and Tiffaney were recording and we were trying a new format, and it really was just like a lot of information up front that eventually led to discussion. And while we think that information is very important and we will be sharing it with you, we want to do it in a way that's super engaging and not so much in a way that like just makes people like not understand, right? Like I feel like Tiffaney, you threw out so much information so fast. Even I was like, okay, we were at statistics and now we are at coping mechanisms. But that was also like, right, the one episode we had filmed before that also did not get posted. I was like, maybe we should go over all the information first and talk about it, which is how we decided to go with that route. And then we decided that also did not work. So it really is just us figuring out what suits us. But also trying to stay integral to the fact that we do want to be informative as well. We do want to help people understand the processes that they're going through, while also, like, specifically in today's episode, just really showing up as we are, who we are, to discuss life in the various aspects that it is. So that is pretty much everything that's happened over the last course of the week in terms of the podcast, why there was no episode last week. And yeah, I don't know if anybody else has anything to add on to that.
Just basically as an addendum, like we're literally just learning. This is the first time that we've done anything like this on any of our parts, and so like there's a little bit of trial and error. And you know what, at the end of the day, the stuff that went on last week as far as like the issues with recording, the format, stuff like that, it's literally just a learning opportunity. We tried it didn't work, and that's okay. And like you said, we're still going to get the information out. I think part of it is I just get so excited about information because, you know, I'm Gemini moon and I'm just like, oh my God, listen to all this stuff that I just found. And and I'm like, let me just tell you. And it doesn't work on a podcast level when there's multiple people because there's not as much engagement. It's just like me speaking facts at people, and that's not. So,
I do love listening to you rant, though. Like, I literally love when you come at me with information so fast. Me and Tiff will get in Twitter beefs with people, and I will just be insulting them to piss them off, and Tiffany will come in with so much statistically correct information that I'm like, these people have no chance. I'm just here to make them mad, and Tiffany's here to prove them wrong.
It's like balance, right? So we're hitting them on both levels. We're like, not only are you a dick, you're also factually wrong.
Yeah. I really do think we got a good balance going there because I lack the patience to look up the facts. Like, right, I've read them, I take them in, they go into, like, the processing part of my brain for my understanding of world issues and stuff like that, but then the, like, literal details leave, so I cannot, like, share that. I can just know when somebody says something, I'm like, you're so fucking ignorant, I can't fucking stand you. Your mom's a bitch. Can't believe she raised you.
Yes.
And then Tiffany will be like, this actually happened 50 years ago according to this law under this division. And I'm like, see, that's what I was fucking talking about.
See, I knew you were wrong.
I just couldn't tell you why.
So, anyway, that's all I have about that.
So don't fight with us on Twitter.
Or do, because we like it and it's fun.
It is fun. At the end of the day, I'm really, like, it's just a Twitter fight. I am not taking this into my life.
No.
Well,
sometimes.
I'm a deeply empathetic person.
Okay.
This is besides the point. I didn't even include my Twitter handle in, like, the description. Because
I did, I think.
You did. But I just know eventually people will find my stuff and they're going to go through my history. And while, like I said, I stand 10 toes down on everything I've ever said because I'm not a shitty person, right? It's just, I'm a very opinionated person. And not everyone agrees with my opinions. And I'm trying to be here for a broader group of people and not just people who believe in my opinions, even though I believe in them very strongly. Mm-hmm. So I was like, Twitter is probably one where, because I do have a lot of opinions and I don't mind sharing them, I was like, I should probably keep it to myself or, like, separate from this podcast because I do want to reach people even if they don't agree with all of my opinions, right? My goal is to help people regardless.
Yeah. Like, I get it because, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but, like,
good.
People who don't believe what we believe as far as, like, certain, you know, like, politics or stuff like that still deserve, you know, treatment and to deal with their trauma. And who knows, if they deal with their trauma, they might be better people.
That, right?
Anyway.
Yeah. Back to, I guess, like, centralizing really, from our learning and trials and things like that, I think we got a better idea of how we wanted to go about this, which was to literally take away the structure and just go back to, like, base one, which is when we get in a group, we like to talk. We have great conversations. Our conversations span all over the place, but because we are the people that we are and we've experienced the experiences we've had, we are able to relate most things back to our trauma in a way that I think people who aren't reflective or people who have not even started their healing journey necessarily can, right? Like, people will know that they have issues in their life, but I feel like have no actual basis from where the issues are stemming from. And I don't think having that level of self-awareness takes away from any of the problems, but it does make it at least slightly easier to navigate. You know what? I'm going to take back. It makes it, for me, a million times easier to navigate. It doesn't make life easier, but it makes the navigation easier because when I think of that time in my life where I couldn't figure out what was wrong, like, I knew there were things that were wrong. Like, things were really, really wrong. But because I was too scared to even self-reflect, I didn't want to, right? Like I literally, I mean, Tiff, you knew me at this time. Like I literally was just terrified to even delve into the past in that regard. Life then was awful. Life now, difficult. It is life, like we say,
Yeah.
but it was not the same as like when I lacked the ability to understand why I was struggling so much.
Right.
So I was just struggling without any understanding to what I was struggling with or about, and that was not cool. So I think being able to relate things back to it is a really important step, or at least it was for me.
I 100% agree, because part of why I went so hard on like the statistics and stuff is because for me, knowing the why behind things and like the root of it helps, because then you develop that self-awareness and you know when you're acting out, you know when you're doing these things, and you know how, not how maybe right away to fix it, but the steps that you need to take to begin to do it. So, I mean, I definitely think becoming self-aware and knowing the why of things does help in the healing journey. Like it can sometimes be like the catalyst.
At least a catalyst for change.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, when I figured out the why, I literally uprooted my whole fucking life and moved 1,000 miles away to then focus on the healing part.
But it was great.
Yeah, it was. It was amazing. I literally, it's one of those things, isn't it crazy how like when you look back through the lens, you always look back and like think of how wonderful it was. And like sometimes I forget to realize I was like not in a horrible way, but I was literally so fucking sad. I was so fucking sad at that time in life. But it was such, right? Like going to group every week, Tiffaney watching Supernatural on the couch. Like it was, when I say exactly what I needed at that time, like I was supposed to be sad. Like it was okay that I was sad because I was grieving. I still am grieving. I'm literally, I don't know if I will ever end my state of grievance. I don't know if that ever ends. That's literally, I don't know, been my topic of therapy this week. But yeah, I don't even remember what I was gonna say. But I was gonna just jump into, because we were talking about how we really wanted it to be group structure, so I'm gonna channel my Maureen and ask, how was your week this week?
So, I guess it's been okay. I've been working on getting school together to get started on that, so that way I can start focusing on that and get into closer to the degree I need to become a therapist. So I'm working on it. It's almost there. So
Are you working on like getting the information you needed to get from your doctors and stuff?
yeah, I'm working on that. That's been the hardest part because you have to get like a date to tell the records, and the records just are like, I'll give you everything except for what you need. So I'm like, okay, cool.
Yes. Yeah,
It's
they're
definitely one
awful.
of those things. They take forever on doing anything. So
Anyone has any advice on how to deal with records offices, it would be greatly appreciated in the comments. Did you do anything else this week?
no, not really. I just everything's just been about my kids. So getting it, and then I got up yesterday because I forgot it was a holiday, and I got up and got my kids ready, or Emma ready. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take her to school. And I actually got up for once instead of Marcy having to get up to help me. And I was like, oh, I'm so proud of myself. And it turns out there was no school at all. So I'm like, oh shit. Okay.
I did that in December. I drove all the way to the school.
Like, it is what it is at this point. So.
Yeah. President's Day is also a hard one because, like, we weren't closed. So it's one of those ones where it's, like, dependent on the district if they're closed or not. That is rough. Yeah. What about you, Tiff? How was your week?
Oh, my God. So, you know, a little bit because we were texting last night. But just, like, I don't know. When I said earlier that life be life, and, like, life kicked my ass this week. And, I don't know. Like, if you follow us on social media, then you saw the post last night about how healing isn't linear. And it's something that I try to remember because I do often get in those ruts where it just feels like I've made no progress at all. And that's just kind of how I felt this week. And it's just been hard. It's hard to remember when you're in the thick of it that it does get better and that you do have ups and downs. But when you're in the thick of it and when the symptoms of trauma and PTSD and all of those are kicking your ass, you're just like, God, have I done any work? Like, did any of that therapy help at all? And it does help. But because like the things that I was dealing with, I felt like I dealt much better with since I've gone to therapy. But yeah, that's just how my week's been. Like, it's just been a kind of blah, really depressed, I had a few manic episodes.
No. Let's talk about them.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know.
Represent.
But mostly it was just, I don't get manic and like, well, mostly because I don't have, like, I'm poor. And so I don't get manic and like, you know, spend a lot of money, and I don't get manic and I don't go out and do a bunch of like things. I think probably just because I'm not able to. But I get manic and I get even more hard on myself and more like I gotta get this done, I gotta get this done, and it has to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, we're gonna do it a million times before. I know you know.
I got a text from Tiffany that said, and I'm gonna do it till I get it right. I said, you don't have to do that.
That is 100% traumatized earth sign. Okay? Like, it's gotta be perfect. But yeah, anyway, that's just how my week's been. It hasn't been great, but it's had some bright spots, you know. So I'm grateful. And hopefully this next week is better. So what about you, other than the, you know, stomach bug?
I've been like thinking about, is this like something I want to talk about on the podcast? Like just everything going on. So I feel I've had a very I don't know the word, because intense does not feel right, honestly. I would say more so like strange, different, odd than typical 2 weeks. I feel like in therapy, I've been in therapy on and off for years, but after my son was born was when I was like, okay, I need to go back to therapy.
Yeah.
So it's been a little bit over a year now, I'm pretty certain, or right around a year from now that I started therapy. And I think in that year, all my therapist has really been working on is getting me to express how I'm feeling to people. Because it has been a reoccurring theme in my life since as long as I can literally remember, where I'm not expressing how I'm feeling. I'm not expressing how I'm feeling. I'm not expressing how I'm feeling. Explosion, because I've suppressed feelings for so long. Yeah, and it's not healthy, and it harms me. Like, as much as it's also not good for the person I'm exploding on, it harms me as well. And I think, so a little bit over a week ago, I sat down with Josh and told him I think we needed to separate. And I want to like share this like very carefully, because people get very wrong ideas of what a separation looks like. Mostly because Josh is an incredible person, like literally such a caring person. He is an amazing dad. Josh and I have not figured out how to communicate with each other whatsoever, like in a way that is actually like healthy for both of us. This is not just a one-sided thing. While I think I was the first person to make the move because I'm the first person to be in therapy, actively like working on it, I think both of us grew up around such toxic relationships. The fact that our relationship wasn't toxic was very, very good. Like, very good. But it also, right, like, I wasn't expressing my feelings. I wasn't talking about things. Josh also wasn't expressing his feelings and wasn't talking about things. So I think we got stuck in this cycle where it's like, I would be overwhelmed and not know how to express myself, or like sorry, I'm going to actually backtrack. I don't know my needs. I have never ever taken the time in my life to figure out what does Natalie need. And that's, I think, a very important part of being in a relationship. And because I've never been in a long-term relationship that I want to succeed, I don't think I've ever even like considered my needs. Yes, there are times in my life where I think I was meeting them without even realizing that I was meeting my needs. But like my therapist would ask me every single week, like, what are you going to do for you this week? And I don't know how many months I answered, I don't know, before it finally hit me that it's a problem that I don't know what I need to do for me. And so I got stuck in this cycle of trying to show up for my son, trying to show up for Josh, trying to be the perfect student, trying to be the perfect mom. And in any moments where I wasn't operating in those roles, I felt defeated and I was completely dissociated, zoned out, and in my own toxic cycle of just like doom scrolling or doom dreaming into like the life and the everything. And I don't know how to like describe how badly I don't want that for Chance. I want to be in the moment so badly. Like I want to exist in the moment so desperately, and I think it's been so long since I've even figured out how. And so at the beginning of the year, before any of this even happened, I had made that my first goal on my list was just like figure out how to like live in my body, my mind, my soul, like harmony between the three. And I think a big part of that is figuring out what my needs are. And I feel like I just got to this point with Josh, and because I was running in this cycle so much of like, neither one of our actual needs were being met, but neither one of us could also identify what our needs are. And it finally reached a point where I was like I need to do something about this. So it's doing something for both of us. And I know he doesn't necessarily see it that way yet. Josh would obviously just like want us to get back together and like everything be perfect and peachy, but I know neither one of us have actually worked on figuring out what we need. And once we do that, like, right, I can't preface enough that there's nothing toxic going on between me and Josh. We are communicating better than we have literally ever now, which also a big part of that is me, right? I felt like in my relationship I couldn't communicate, and then once I was like, we're not in a relationship, I could communicate. I think that shows very deep relationship issues about myself. Like, that is about me. That is not at all about Josh. But recognizing that is good for me, because that means I can figure out why is that so hard for me to do, and why can't I do that, and stuff like that. So I have so much to say on it, but I think the bigger thing I want to keep saying is that, like, we are okay. Like, I feel like my family, because I don't know, like, I'm a child of 2-time divorcee, toxic fighting, a lot of stuff. They cannot comprehend that what's happening between me and Josh is, like, actually not some horrible fighting thing. It's, from the jump, I think Josh really understood that, like, I am trying to focus on myself and my issues, and because we already had a good foundation. I've never once felt like Josh would ever cheat on me. He's never once felt like I would cheat on him, because we wouldn't. We literally wouldn't. And so I think taking that out of it completely, because we both already felt so certain in each other that we weren't doing anything, like, shady. There was no shadiness. I think this has been easier because neither one of us, like, ever hurt each other. Now, I think if we would have kept going down our cycle of not meeting each other's needs, it would have eventually led to somebody hurting the other person, right? Like, because you can't stay in that cycle forever. So something eventually happens, and I think because I've wound up in that cycle enough in my life, I was able to recognize the cycle so well, which is why I needed to, like, press pause and figure myself out. That way that cycle doesn't keep going on. Josh is my son's father. He is a person I will get along with the rest of my life. The rest of my life, we will be a team to some regard. So do I want to be a team that's fighting, or do I want to be a team that is like really good and really working together?
Mm-hmm.
And we want to be a team that's really good and working together. And I know so much of that comes from the fact that both Josh and I grew up in homes where like the team didn't function very well.
Yeah.
The team was not teaming. And so I am incredibly grateful that Josh is the person that he is, and that he was receptive to hearing me, because I think well, I literally know in therapy I spent weeks building up so much fear on what would happen, and the fact that like none of it even happened. And when I say fear, I literally relived my childhood and all the things that were horrible throughout my parents' separation, and then my dad's second separation. Like, I mean, I vividly just relived them because I was so certain they were about to happen to me. And then I expressed myself well. And I think a big thing, too, is I assured Josh there is no world in which I am taking time of chance away from either of us. I think it is very crucial for a kid, if it's plausible for the parents to do, because I understand it is not always plausible. So I am not shaming anyone else's separation or parental tactics, you know, like, I am not. But for me and Josh's values, we did not want to lose time with Chance. We don't want to. He makes us happy. He makes us feel whole. And that wasn't a part of what either of us wanted. So I think assuring him so much in the very beginning, too, that, like, I will do everything I can to make sure you even have more time with him. Like, I don't care what it is that I have to do, but that's what I'll do. So, yeah, I'm going to pass it over to you, Tiffany, because I feel like I need a drink.
No, I really just wanted to say that, like, it's such a healthy step to take, and it sounds bad to say that, like, well, maybe not bad. Some people take it as a bad thing, right? To say that you're separating from this person, like it has to be like a big thing, but it is genuinely the best thing that could happen. If you don't feel like, you know, that's the kind of relationship you want to portray to your son, and you feel like going on in that cycle was going to end up causing problems and cause the toxicity that you saw when you were growing up. Like, I'm so proud of you, because it's a hard step to do. It's such a hard thing. And like you said, it's actually almost harder because Josh isn't a bad guy. Josh is a great guy. Like, if he had like, you know, a huge temper, or like, you know, can't even think of anything else right now, but like it would have probably been a lot easier. But the fact that there is no like visible reason for you to want to separate, I think is also playing into why it's hard for like your family to kind of like digest things, because you're like, oh my God, there was nothing wrong, there's nothing toxic going on, so why? But it does become toxic when you don't have that level of communication, and you don't have that level of feeling safe, and you don't have, you know, all of these things that you need. It will become toxic. So kudos. I don't know if applause is correct, but kudos. And like I said, I'm really proud of you, because that is a huge step, and it's so hard.
Yeah, I think it opened up communication for me and Josh in a way that it needed to be opened up. Like, I don't know if it's just like, I have so much fear. I mean, I literally live with it in me all the time, of just, and this is a symptom of PTSD, I'm well aware of it, but when I say I literally live every second of my life thinking the rug is about to be pulled out from underneath me, and everything is just going to get thrown around, and I'm gonna be left with having to try to pick up all the pieces again and figure out how they fit and stuff. Living with that fear is not easy. It's not fun. There's nothing good about it, but it also like makes doing what's right for you really, really hard, because you're already scared. And I think that was also a big part of it, is because not being able to communicate and not being able to meet my needs was ultimately making me not feel safe. And that has everything to do with my trauma, not Josh, because right? I feel like I have to put so much preface out there. Josh never did anything to make me not feel safe necessarily. He just wasn't making me feel safe. And as a person who is walking around with my mind is like constantly shooting fires, shooting stuff. So Josh not being able to, sorry, he just texted me, but Josh has a hard time, and this is a literal problem I think most men deal with because of the society constructs, talking about feelings. He struggles greatly with it, and as a person who has so many feelings that they can't even possibly sort out half the time because there's so many happening, I need to get it out because it's like the only way that I do start to feel comfortable and not so on edge all the time. And I think that was part of what was playing into that cycle, was just like not being able to emotionally be vulnerable, but also in the moments I was not being met with the reassurance I needed because Josh didn't know how to be reassuring, because Josh doesn't know how to feel emotions, which is why I also think Josh is on his own journey, because he's also discovering that is something he deserves to have too. We are literally people living our human experience, but when I say we are trying to do everything the best we can for our son, on top of it, ourselves too, as my therapist would say, you deserve it too. Because I have a big habit of being like, I'm doing this for my kid, and she's like, but you should do it for you too. But he is a great like pusher for me to want to do better for myself. Like I literally look at him and it's just like, my God, the way I wish I could defend you against this world that I know I can't. So it's more so, how can I give you the tools you need that's going to prepare you to be the safest version of yourself in this world? Because I can't change the world. Well, I'm trying to. Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna make my impact.
But we're trying. We will. We will.
But I cannot change all evil. I cannot remove it. So I have to teach myself the way to navigate the world, and then on top of it, I'm also trying to instill things in him that will help him navigate it. A big thing being emotions, which we all did not learn or get to have.
Emotional regulation was not on the menu when we were growing up, let me tell you.
Do you have anything to say?
Well, I mean, a lot of things that you've already said, I've already been through. So it's kind of like one of those things where you're just kind of listening, but you're like, I remember when that happened to me.
Yeah. We'll talk about it. I want to hear it.
I had the same problem happen too. Like me and John were going through like everyday cycles where I wouldn't speak up about what my problems were, and then he didn't think that there was any, so he was just like, why are you slamming things and being upset? And like, I don't understand what's going on. It's like, because you didn't put the lids down. Like, no, it's not the lids. Like, obviously it's not the lids going down. It's the fact that there is something that I wasn't saying that clearly needed to be addressed. And he was just like, my wife is crazy. I don't know, but but he never made me feel crazy. He just was like, okay, what do you need? Like, because he didn't know either. Like he's just one of those guys that are just like, he takes what you say face value. If you say you're fine, he's gonna think you're fine because he doesn't know any different. So you have to be the one to just be like, no, I'm not okay. But for years we did that, and we like were never fighting and never had any disagreements, which was actually a problem because we didn't have those and we needed those. And it wasn't until our marriage almost ended where we actually started doing that, and we actually started being like, okay, well, what do we need to work on? So we started working on it, and it got better, and then we ended up getting an extra partner involved, and now we do the same. So we're all very open, and I struggle with it. Like, I lived in a house where you got beat the fuck up if you said anything about how you're feeling. So I was just like, you get screamed at, you get hit. Like, I'm not. And then so immediately your brain goes back to being like that small kid that used to get beat up whenever you need to say what you need to say. And it's just like, I was so scared of the way they would react that like I couldn't say what I needed to say. And then I would blow up, and they both were like, where the fuck is this coming from? Like, what's going on? And then of course every single time I felt even worse because they were like the most genuine, loving people whenever I would finally come and talk to them about it. And they were so gentle with me and they like worked it all out. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck I was afraid of. Like, but that happened for so many times until I finally just was like, hey, I don't like that shit. And they're like, okay, cool. We won't do that anymore. But it took a long time to get to that point. And that's where it takes a lot of therapy. It takes a lot of communication. It also takes, if you're in an extreme case like I am, it helps to have medication because medication was helping me realize that because whenever I would have, it wasn't just like a flashback or it wasn't just like me thinking about what used to happen. It was literally my body was reliving it. I would go in full body shakes. I would throw up. I would have panic attacks where I couldn't breathe and like they had to hold me until I like calmed down. And it's just like, and then I would have like go into autistic meltdown, which is hitting yourself, like beating your own self up, like that kind of thing. So it was very, very bad until I got on medication and it helped regulate my emotions because my emotions would be heightened and the stress level would be heightened. So therefore my body would react how it used to react. So there was no stopping it. It was no like, I can reason with myself to get myself out of that. No, there was no doing that. So I was like more of an extreme case in that instance. So I had to have help to regulate my body so I could get through things. Like even now talking about it, I'm shaking because it's just one of those things where it's really hard for me.
That's actually a really okay. So it without the addition of trauma in your life and PTSD and stuff like that, it actually is when you relive things from your past, when you remember incidences, your body literally responds the same way it would as if you were still in the incident. So like if you're remembering an incident of like being angry at something, like even when you're not in the situation, just remembering it, your blood pressure rises, you know, your heartbeat increases, all that stuff. And it's like when you have trauma and you have PTSD or CPTSD, it's like tenfold. Like, and that's the problem because you're already dysregulated and then being back in that. So like I definitely identify with how hard it is to be in those triggering situations. I can't imagine being in it on your end just because I myself didn't experience like the physical abuse when I was growing up. Like I was exposed to it. And all sorts of other things when I was growing up. That's led to some other things, but the medication does help sometimes. And I know it helps for you. It doesn't help for everybody. And also it usually takes like 2 or 3 times. Like for me, when I was doing like SSRIs or like antidepressant medications, I had to try like 4 or 5 different medications before I found the right one.
Yeah,
So,
you will.
Yeah.
That's definitely one of those things. I had to try like 10 different medications.
Yeah.
But it's also the fact that when it starts inhibiting your regular normal functions, it's kind of at that point you kind of have to figure out what works for you, or else you'll end up ruining all the relationships that you possibly have. Mm-hmm. So depending on how bad your reactions are.
Yeah.
I actually think the medication conversation is so important, and it's actually one that I feel like I cannot speak on enough, because even in times where I probably should have been medicated, like I look back and I'm like, that would have helped me. I didn't, because another thing a friend of mine has said is like it's not always like a long-term thing, and I think that's why I've always been scared of medicine. It's that I feel like I'm gonna have to take it and be on it forever, and I maybe am probably way too headstrong. Actually, not am, maybe I am too headstrong, and like, even though it would have helped me, I'm so convinced that like I'm gonna figure my brain out that I didn't do it. And I am wary to talk about that experience myself because I regret it. And maybe not regret is the right word, but I do just think because of that fear, definitely made times of my life harder.
Yeah.
And there was one time in my life where I ever went, medication, and it was in high school for anxiety. Which is funny because that was also probably the least anxious time in my life. And I'm not saying I wasn't anxious because I was incredibly anxious. I'm saying in terms of my life, that's when I was the least anxious, though. And I mean, I've talked to you about it this whole last year, Tiff. I go back and forth on it so often it's not even funny. I'm like, I think I'm going to go get medicine. And then a week later, I'm like, I don't need medicine. I'm one of those people who just bounce back and forth and have not fully committed since that one time I took anxiety medicine in high school. And because I suck at taking medication, I don't think I ever took it consistently, not once. So that's not good. But I did. Reese, when you were speaking, you said 3 words that really hit home for me. You said fear of reactions. And I live in that state, terrified of how other people are going to react. And this is something that, for me, most definitely stems from my trauma, because it's one of those things where I can look back at, like, high school Natalie, and when I say that bitch could assert her boundaries like no other. It was like, right, if I had a friendship that I knew wasn't working, if I had something that just, like, wasn't right and wasn't good for me, I was very good at just being like, hey, yo, I'm gonna take a step back, sorry, and could go along with my business. And then trauma happened, so much trauma happened, and somewhere in there, and I've always struggled with people pleasing, but somewhere in there, I got so scared of other people's reactions to the point where it debilitated me for very long periods of time. So I just want to talk about it. I grew up, this is something I feel like I can't talk about because I've talked about it with my mom at this point, but she was a very overreactive person growing up. She was definitely the type of person who believed that you had to fight it out in order for things to get resolved. And I think that raised a child who held it all in because I didn't have the capacity to fight it. But it also just created somebody who, like I was talking about with Josh, I sit there in my feelings but have the hardest time expressing them because I'm so scared of what you're going to say to me when I express my feelings that it's an inhibitor for me. It's one of the things I'm actively working on getting over, and I do think I'm getting better.
Yeah, fear of reaction is a huge thing. So like I was saying before, like I didn't myself experience like the physical abuse when I was growing up. But my dad had such large and loud reactions to things, and you never knew exactly what it was that was gonna set him off. Right? And so it has led to that. Like I really refrain from doing things that I think are going to upset people, because I don't want to do it. Like to this day, especially with men, and it really pisses me off because, you know, I'm the raging feminist that I am. Like I want to be like, I can get up in a man's face and be like, fuck you. But when hearing a man, just even being in the vicinity of a man who's raising his voice, I lose my shit and I just start crying. And but anyway, just in generally though, the fear of how people are going to react inhibits me so much. And I think that's why I have such a tendency, and you probably have such a tendency to hold things in, because you're like, how is this going to, like, if I say this person's just going to get so upset and they're just going to, like, you know, hate me, and they're not ever going to want to talk to me, or they're just going to be like, you know, whatever. And it's such a detrimental thing to communication. Like it's hard to have open and honest communication when you're feeling like that. So that's something that definitely that I've struggled with, and I started working on in therapy before I stopped going this last time. But when I start again, I think that's got to be something that's got to be like top level that I want to work on, that and self-confidence, because I have zero. But yeah, go ahead, Reese.
I know, like, I used to be a lot like that, and I think over the past, I don't know, 6 months, I've changed to where now I'm just kind of like, eh. Like, I'm kind of like, I don't really care anymore, because if they really wanted to be in my life and they really wanted to, like, give me their best effort, they would sit there and act the way my partners do. And that's where I'm, like, to the point now where I'm just kind of like, eh. Because I've had so many people, like, disappoint me or upset me or just flat out leave because, like, I say or do something that they don't like. And I'm just over here like, I don't see the point in caring anymore, especially, and I'm going to change names for obviously purposes, but Joanna, and everybody knows who Joanna is
Okay, I
one
have
of
a good
the
idea.
Yeah,
friends,
same.
Yes.
a friend that I had gone like almost like you and Tiffany, like gone through thick and thin with, like have talked about everything, did everything, and we got to a point, or I at least got to a point where it was just like I was trying so hard all the time that I'm like, why am I trying so hard for obviously someone who doesn't want to try as hard? And they would call me and be there, like, and call me when they needed me at like 3 a.m, and I'd be there. I'm just that person. But if you're gonna sit there and act like complete opposite when I do the same, and it's not the same energy level, I don't want it. Like, I don't need it. And that's where I've gotten to the point where I'm just, I've really grown up and realized that people are gonna be there if they're gonna want to be there, and that's at this point I'm gonna find myself filling my time with things that I enjoy until people are like, I want to be in your vicinity, I want to be in your life, and things like that. And until then, I'm just like, I step back now and I look at people and I look at what they do and I look at how they act, and I'm like, interesting, because you can learn a lot by just watching.
Oh yeah,
completely watching, and you're like, you got some red flags I'm not okay with. They look a lot like all the other ones. I'm like, I'm not going to waste my time on that. So I think a lot of people have to get to that point. But I also know the extreme loneliness can be a problem. But I know there's ways around that. Like, there are things that you can do, and eventually people, will show up. You just have to manifest that energy a lot.
First of all, I just want to clap because it's not, I don't even care what it is. Reese, I do see it in you. Like, literally, like, the growth, the ability to express yourself. I've seen it just in the last few weeks. And I was also wrote it down because, Tiffany, you did the same thing just like a couple weeks ago. Like, I literally wrote, Tiff doing good work, Reese too. Exclamation point. Because I think it is something we all struggle with. So those little victories, at least for me, where I'm like, oh, I did something, instead of like getting to the point where I exploded, I'm like, oh, I did it. Like, I really did just like say it.
It's like an adrenaline rush.
Yeah, like I'm like, I can't control the reaction. Like, that's something that I have to just swallow and accept in life.
Yeah.
Oh my God, how badly I wish I could. But I did it anyway. And what a freaking great feat for us, actually, because while we're talking about how hard it is and acknowledging it, we have literally all within the last few weeks at one point done something, said something about how we were feeling, even though we didn't know what the reaction would be.
Yeah.
And I'm just I am proud of us. Like, I really am. And then, man, I hate that I don't write comprehensive things down because you said something, Reese, and I said I felt that with like 10 exclamation points. And I don't know what it was. So when I'm editing, whatever you say, I'm going to put I felt that like right above my forehead. So good idea. That way we'll be like, oh, that's what she was talking about. Because I know when I play it back, I'm going to be like, yeah.
Yes.
God, I can't even read what that word is. Trying hard for other people? Nope. Take more comprehensive notes, Natalie, in the future.
I mean, you thought it would work, so good for you.
Yeah.
You thought it was going to work. I mean,
it helps sometimes, like when I wrote fear of reaction, it kept it up there for me to bring back up.
Oh, yeah, that'll work.
But you were saying so many awesome things so fast, and then I kept getting excited for you. Like, I think the first thing I realized when editing the video is that I I did not bring my fidget with me today, which I should have done, but I am a very
high energy.
something on me is always moving. Apparently, recently it's been the lip biting thing, which I really was trying not to do during this episode, but also remembered halfway through that I'm trying not to do it. But I think I talked so much that I think it's not something I was doing so bad. But it's like, if I'm not biting my lip, like, I'm just cracking my knuckles or moving my fingers or my toes.
Or spinning in your chair.
Yeah.
You know?
Something is always going.
Yeah, same.
So, I'm proud of us. We have done the things that are hard for us to do, which is to literally just, I don't know, be honest about how we're feeling and assert a boundary or two.
And not being afraid of losing people. Because I think that's a lot of the reason why people keep things bottled up. Because honestly, you have to think of what you're losing. If it's someone who is constantly making you feel bad and constantly invalidating your feelings, like, what do you have that you're really losing? I mean, I can make myself feel bad. I don't need you to do that for me. Like,
Period.
Why? Like, why would I want another person telling me, oh, you forget a lot of shit? I was like, I know I forget a lot of shit. Thanks. Instead of somebody who's going to be like, oh, take notes, or hey, do this, or, you know. Yeah.
No, I love that, because I think, especially for me the last few months, I feel like I've realized there have been multiple relationships, because while Josh and I's was a different kind of separation because we are still in each other's lives and everything is great, I have been going through a thing, and it's because I think I am garnering self-confidence, and I am garnering figuring out my boundaries and what I am okay and not okay with. I realize there are people who have been in my life that are not good for my life at all. And it has been a really tough pill for me to swallow. It has been difficult in so many ways I don't even know how to express. Because both just like, right, feeling the feelings of unfulfilled relationships on top of feeling those unfulfilling relationships bringing you down, and it goes back to not expressing my feelings, I guess, to a certain degree, because it's like, why do you keep treating me like this? And how do you not recognize that you're treating me horribly? And
no, they know. That's the problem. They know, and that's what happens. You need somebody in your corner. And have somebody sit there and manipulate you back into, like, their, you know.
That's what they want.
Too. They're miserable, so they want you to be miserable. And then when you stop being miserable, they no longer want to have you around because they can't control you or manipulate you into staying in that position.
Right. You're so right.
I'm telling you.
No,
that's... I've had so many toxic relationships. It took me almost my whole life to figure that out. I was like,
yeah, I'm figuring it out now.
Better late than never.
Yeah, sorry. Lily's just breathing into the mic. Reese, I cannot agree enough with what you're saying. Like, I feel like you're spitting facts at me. I feel like I've just spent a lot of this year mourning relationships that I've realized were dead for a while. And it hasn't been until recently that I've actually been able to take action towards that. And I've got to preface, I'm not talking about Josh when I'm talking about that. Our relationship, despite not being together, is, I feel like, in a better point than it's been in a while.
He's in your corner. He's in your corner. He's one of the people that are going to make you feel safe. And that's very important.
Yes.
Because if I didn't have my partners and the way they reacted, if they didn't react the way they did when I was telling them how I felt, I probably would be in a way worse situation than I am now. And then feel like completely stuck with my kids. But now it's like, I know I can come to them and be like, hey, I don't like this. And they're like, okay, how can we fix it? How can we change? The people that are actually willing to work with you and like get you to where you need to be, those are the people that you want in your life, even if it's just, you know, an ex-partner who's now just really good friends. Like, that's good. It's just the support system that you need. It doesn't matter who it is, as long as it's somebody who's going to be in your corner.
Yeah. No, I agree. losing relationships is hard, but doing what feels best for me feels better. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
feels better. And so I, and going back, I think this is what you said where I was like, I felt that, oh man, don't lose the box. Don't go into the box. What was it? You said something about like loneliness, and like during that phase, like eventually I'm going to find people, because I felt so isolated this whole last year. You know, like I was living in Florida,
Mhm.
moved back to Illinois, but moved to a part of Illinois where I did not know anyone.
Mhm.
And then I had a baby during the winter, so I was so scared to leave my house. And just like that first 6 months before Chance started daycare, I had never felt loneliness like I did during that time. Like Josh was like bringing people from work, like trying to like find me friends. Like literally Josh was setting up friend dates for me. But the thing about it is that it just wasn't going to work because I wasn't meeting people like the way I like to meet them or organically, and it just like wasn't the connection how I like to make connections.
Mm-hmm.
Once I was able to actually go out into the world, I feel like I have been making connections, but it is very slow moving, right? I feel like I've been very close friends with the people I have been friends with for so long that you forget that it took a long time to feel that close to people. And now I'm in this phase where it's like I have a better understanding of myself. I have a better understanding of the people that I want around. And now it's just a matter of finding them and figuring out how to be okay in my own skin and in my own growth while I'm in that phase of finding the best people. Which you guys are the best people. It's just hard because you guys live 12 hours away from me.
Yeah.
I think that also another thing that we have to think and consider on our viewers is it may be some stay-at-home moms that are feeling the same way, because I can't tell you, because I've been a stay-at-home mom for 8 years now, it is excruciatingly lonely and isolating.
So lonely.
I,
So
like I said,
lonely.
recommend if anybody has, because there's not a lot of help for mothers that are like, they are
Low
the support
income.
system for everyone. But I would definitely tell anybody who's stay-at-home mom who doesn't get time, like try to get their partner or somebody who they can trust to watch their kids for at least an hour or two, to take a shower and, you know, have a really nice bath or have some wine or do something that's going to get you out of that funk, because eventually it's not going to always be forever. I felt like until my kids went to school, I thought it was going to be forever. It was never going to end, but it does end. You'll eventually get your break that you need, and you can start rebuilding your life, which is kind of like what I'm doing, where I'm finally going back to school and getting started. But I understand how lonely and how excruciatingly painful it can be, especially, you know, with your kids being so young. Like, you can't always talk to them because they're not old enough to really talk to. You can teach them, but you can't really communicate with them. That's why I would just, you know, urge people to try to like keep a support system around if you have one, or like have somebody watch the kids for a couple hours. I mean, I know you need that break, so, but I also know there's some women that can't get that break, which I also would just say, like, maybe try a podcast, try like different things that you can do while the baby's napping. I know you're also trying to nap too, but
We're here.
yeah, talk to us, like, you know.
Yes.
Listen to us, whatever. But I also know that there's like a few other things that just, you know, might work for you. Just try little things that you can do in between the baby, like sleeping. And, you know, that's all I can say, because I really want to reach out to stay-at-home moms, because I know they're dealing with a lot, especially if they're in any domestic violence situations, and or like, you know, just stuck,
Yeah.
you know, wherever they are. So I just want to make sure that we talk to them as well.
I completely agree. Reese, I love so much of what you're saying. I cannot agree. Those were the 6 hardest months. When I say people do not understand or respect stay-at-home moms whatsoever, what they're going through, how difficult it is to be so isolated, they just don't understand. People think it's a privilege not to go to work. No, your work is 24/7. You don't get a break. You don't get 30-minute paid breaks, or you don't get time off unless you have a partner or somebody coming in that's helping you. And frankly, that partner is also working. So, right, it's like running out on cylinders. Unless you have a huge, massive support system, you're just running on cylinders all the time. And so I agree. We want to be here for y'all as well. We literally love and respect and understand everything you're doing. Reese, 8 years. My God, I literally don't know how you do it, because once month 6 hit, I was like, I gotta do something. Like, something has to get done. And fortunately for me, everything worked out really well with daycare, and meeting the ladies at the daycare was like the first time I stepped out of isolation. Like, I literally think I stepped into that room and probably just didn't shut the fuck up, because it was the first time I got to talk to somebody who could talk back to me outside of Josh. So yeah.
It's hard.
It is hard, and we love and respect y'all. We're running on a time crunch, so we do have to log off for the day, but we are working on getting our schedules down right. We will be back with you for sure next Thursday. I think we also have some creative ideas on different episodes.
Yeah.
Excuse me. We might be uploading on different days of the week, so stay tuned and look out for that. We love y'all so much. Stay happy, stay healing, stay healthy. Deuces.
Deuces.
The first thing I want everybody to do, it doesn't matter if you're in the car or you're laying down or where you are, is tuck your hips so they push forward a little and straighten your back. Then roll your shoulders back, unclench your jaw, relax your eyebrows, and then we're going to breathe in for 3 seconds, hold it for 3 seconds, breathe out for 3 seconds, hold it for 3 seconds, and then do that 3 times. Ready? Okay, ready, in, and then hold it, 2, 3, and out. And hold it, and breathe in, and hold it, and out, and hold it. This is the last time. And hold it, and out, and hold it. And before we start moving around, I just want you to start at your toes, start wiggling them to wake yourself back up. And then you can roll your ankle, or if you're driving, just move them a little. And flex your knees a little. Then warm up your fingers, roll your wrists, kind of shake your shoulders out, unclench your jaw again, and just try to relax. And then drink some water. Because I have been noticing some of us have been drinking water during the podcast, and some of us have not been drinking water. So I really do think, even while you're listening to this podcast, remember to take a drink of water or have a little snack, because we forget to do that, and it's important. It is important for our emotional healing, even though it doesn't sound like it makes sense yet. It will.
It is.
It is.